we're going to jump in and just a couple things with this, just for those that might be visually challenged. We have, as we get started here, I'm a white woman, blondish, whitish hair, about chin length, glasses, and wearing a red sweater and red and white scarf, which is a great reminder to give blood because I am with the blood bank. So the world needs everybody to donate blood. That's my shameless plug. All right, so I would love to hear from you. I can't hear from everyone, but Mike can give me a little summary if we can. But why are you here? What brought you to this topic? What is your hope to get out of this presentation in the next few minutes? And also, while you're doing that, now's the time to take your phones and to silence them and to, turn them over, put them away, close the door if you have a door on your office or your room, on your computer. I know it's really tempting to leave all those tabs up there. Close the tabs and just focus, because this is your time. You created the time for this, you signed up for this, and it's going to give you some great ideas, some great questions. And so with that, just while you're doing all those little housekeeping things, breathe deeply with me, right? So that always helps everybody kind of just focus. So we're going to breathe in, and then you're going to breathe out, and we're going to do that a few times. So just do that as you're closing your tabs, closing your phone, closing the door. And then we're going to breathe again. All right. How's everybody feeling? One more, maybe? Okay, good. That's great. So here we go. I just want to have you think about whether you have, piece of paper, notepad, whatever, napkin, I don't care, whatever you have, and a pen, pencil. Here's some things to think about as you're going through this presentation with me. Is what is one thing that you want to share with somebody else after this presentation? The sooner you share something with somebody, the better you're going to remember it. It's a great learning, remembering tool. What is one thing that you want to implement this week, this month? Not like a whole entire thing, but one thing. And something I saw somebody else do, and I've offered it now since then, is if you want me to nudge you and be like almost like a accountability partner and want me to check in with you in 2 weeks, whatever, just link up with me on LinkedIn, connect, send me a message and say, hey, I was on the talk today and I want you to, touch base with me in 2 weeks. And this is what I'm going to do in 2 weeks. I'm happy to do that. That'd be great. And just something too, just to remember, this is going to have a lot of questions and a lot of things to look at in your volunteer engagement. But if you make only 1% change for the better, it's not very big, right? 1%. But if you can get 1% better every day for a year, you're going to end up being 37 times farther along and better than if you did nothing. So just pick one thing, and so think about that as we're going through the presentation. Today we're going to talk about recruiting like a house. I like analogies, so it's like a house. And who are you inviting to your home, to your house? How are you preparing for your company? And what do you do when they come in? So I know this is a hot topic, right? Kind of on fire. So I will not have all the answers, because if any of us had all of the answers, I think it would be out there and we'd all be like, thank you, Eureka, right? But my view on this is that some of the things that I have do work, and I want to share with those. And I'm also going to ask a lot of questions. And so I just want to kind of give you a heads up on that, on the presentation style. So a lot of people are talking about it. Resources are available out there. These are the things that have worked for me. And volunteer engagement, as you probably already know, is not a set it and forget it. We have to keep going back and reviewing. Because why? Because things change. Everything changes. So add into the chat, what are some things that have changed in life? Volunteers have changed. Life situations have changed for the volunteers, for us maybe. Expectations of volunteers. Now we just phone up or, do an order online and things get delivered to our door, and food, even like all these things, like we don't have to leave the house. Who would have thunk, 10 years ago? Technology keeps changing. All of these things keep changing. But with all of the change, there's still foundational things for what we do engaging volunteers that still need to be solid and somewhat the same, but maybe tweaked a little. And that's what we're going to talk about. So again, volunteer recruitment to me seems like a house. Before we get to the house, like I said, these questions that I'm going to go through are going to talk about reviewing and knowing where you are and maybe where you need to renovate or update your house. And so each one of us has a different house, and we're going to all need a different custom change. So that will be something to think about. So let's stop and think about, why do we want volunteers? Do we want volunteers? Do we even want volunteers? Do we need volunteers? Of course, I think we're all here. We're going to like, yes, of course we need volunteers. But if your organization at some point says, no, they're not important, we don't care, find another job, because that's not where you need to be. Or work really hard to try to change their minds. There's that option too. But we need to know why, as we're building a house and renovating a house. Like, is it going to be for 50 people or, 2 kids? Or is it, what does this look like? What's your capacity building that you need for volunteers and for your guests, your people coming into your house? And maybe there's community relations. What are the things? Why does your organization need volunteers? Why do you want volunteers? Put that in the chat, and then we can go through, and Mike's going to keep up with all of, I'm sure it's like scrolling quickly. And we can kind of, at the end, there will be plenty of time to work through some of this too and ask questions and answer. So just thinking about that. Volunteers are people, right? And so with people, we want to know how they're being treated. How do you treat your volunteers? How do you want volunteers to be treated? How you want to be treated? So people need to be treated in a good way. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Challenges. People have challenges. We all have challenges. We're all people. There's the economy, time constraints, family, location, isolation that we deal with. There's so many challenges in today's world. And then in life, we just have life. Life happens, right? So maybe people have lack of purpose that they're looking for. People are busy. I think that's a big, big one. Mental well-being, that's another, just life thing that happens. Expectations have changed, and we all have expectations that are probably a little different than each other. So looking at that lens of like people. So who is it that you want to invite to your house? What does their life look like? And for retirees, they're working, students, there's other, quote categories too, but those are the biggest ones that I've thought of. And so retirees, we have to keep in mind, retirees now are babysitting grandkids. They're maybe still taking care of parents. They are maybe traveling a lot more. And so they're going to be gone for 6 months or every other month or whatever their traveling schedule is. They do other volunteering. Typically, I find that the volunteers that are out volunteering might really have more than one place that they're volunteering because they love it and they're being active. And then just they're taking other classes. They have other hobbies, other things are going on in their life. Working. So some of us, most of us maybe are working folks, right? We're working people. And so what are we doing? We're working during the day, typically. Now working at home has changed things. Schedules are different. So just keeping that in mind too, that may free people up to come volunteer during the day, but maybe not. It just depends. They might be looking for shorter term or episodic kind of short term, one time kind of volunteer opportunities. And these are all the changes that are going on that we need to evaluate and see how we need to change our house so that it fits better for them. Working, they have family, friends, obligations, and or desires to be with other people that they like. And they just have regular life like we all do, right? The laundry and cleaning and whatever else. Students, of course, they're doing classes during the day or night. Again, that can vary too. Events that they're involved with, whether it's sports or clubs or whatever else it is. They might have homework if they're a student. And then, of course, they want some downtime and hanging out with their friends and maybe family, depending on the age of the student. And then I put this in. Some people love routine. It's not like a category per se, but it's a group of folks that love routine. And they want to be able to come every Tuesday at. They still exist. I just spoke with a brand new volunteer who's a new retiree who was like, I want something on a regular basis. I want to know when it is so that she can work everything else around it. So that does still exist. But there are plenty of people that still want to just have that flexible schedule. All right, so here's a poll that should be going up. So when was the last time that you reviewed the handbook and the roles and the training? All right, so put that in there because I'm going to be talking a lot about questions and reviewing things. So when was the last time that you reviewed those basic things like the handbook, the roles, the training? Does that kind of make you think like, oh my gosh, I don't know? Or were you like, oh yeah, I just did it this past, in the last 6 months? It's something that's easy to get set once and go, oh, okay, good. Whew, that's done. Post it somewhere and you're, kind of set it and forget it. But I'm here to ask a lot of questions like, when was the last time that looked, we looked at that I looked at our handbook, the role review, the role descriptions, the training, and maybe it needs to get changed, and that can take time. And there's lots of things about delegation that I can talk about and a whole nother topic. This is going to be a big, broad overview. And might feel free to close the poll and post that whenever you're ready. But with that, it's going to be a lot of things to review, right? A lot of questions. So can't remember, within 2 to 5, under 2. Excellent. You guys are awesome. So I'm really impressed with that. And so, if it's been within the 2, if it was like 2 years ago, it still might be good time to like start slowly reviewing those things again. So thank you for that poll and answering that for everybody. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start our house. And so usually if you're going to go buy a house, right, there's the curbside appeal. And so thinking about curbside appeal on the volunteer side of things would be your website. What do volunteers or potential applicants and volunteers see? Your website, your flyers, your social media, what does that all look like? And not just look like pictures, but pictures are definitely important. But what are the colors? Does it match your theme and your logo? Is it readable? Is it dark contrast, white contrast? Like, is it actually very easy to read? Have you kept into mind colorblind colors? So you're not putting red on green or whatever those colors, I think that's the right colors. But thinking about that, is the language really clear and inclusive? I know I've heard other folks talking about words that don't necessarily translate into other languages very well. And so who is it that who are you looking at coming in as a volunteer, and are you being inclusive to as many people as possible? And what does that look like? Can people even find the website? Where are the links? Is it, very easy, or is it 10 links or clicks, or can you find it in 1 or 2 clicks? How hard is it to navigate? Again, there's going to be a lot of questions, and Mike had said that you'll be able to get this at the end, so then you can go through all these questions later and use this as a good review and a good way to just see where you're at. Do you have a porch? Do you like porches? I love porches. So do you have a porch with a perch? And your perch can look different. Everybody's perch looks a little different. I put a couple here in the picture. Your application, what does your application look like? This is kind of your next step. Like, they came in from the street, they're out of the car, and now they're up on the porch. And so what's the application? Are there too many questions? I know I've been in talks talking about data and how we need to have some data, but we need to keep the least amount of personal information as possible. And so what does your application call for? And have you looked at that? What does your screening look like? And so screening too, is it too complex? Is it too much? Or is it just right? Ask your current volunteers, or ask the volunteers that just came into your volunteer engagement, and ask them, like, how was it for you? Did you like it? Was it easy? Was it hard? What kind of tripped you up? So do you also have low commitment kind of roles that they can go into? Is it something that they can kind of test the water? They put the foot in a little bit and go, yeah, I like it. I'm going to stick around a little bit longer. I want to do more. Or they stick their toe in and go, this just isn't the right pool for me. So, they're checking that out too. So that's another way to have a porch with a perch. It's a way to like that next first step in. So of course, with the house, you need to have a good foundation. And so what are you building your house on? And something just for accessibility and readability, when I moved these links into the PowerPoint, they popped as a hyperlink. And so they were blue. It was blue on blue. And I didn't realize it until I'd swapped it over. Fortunately, I caught it before the presentation. So now I changed it into white. So those are things to keep in mind too, like just that accessibility. Blue on blue is a little hard to read. But with this, what are the best practices? So I highly recommend the CVA. If you're not familiar with that, you can look up the Council for Certification in Volunteer Administration. And so they have a great handbook and workbook textbook really that you can use and purchase and use that to apply and get your CVI. Great foundational information, solid base that you're going to be able to use to know what the ethics are, know what the basic good foundations are. Other things, there's sessions and great resources from ALIVE, the Association of Leaders in Volunteer Engagement. Their website is filled with great information. If you're not a member, highly recommend that as well. And then Engage Journal is another great resource to have wonderful articles and more information. And if you have other resources that it's your go-to, put those in the chat and we'll be able to see all the great resources that you're already using and hopefully add some more into for others to use as well. So what tools are you using? When you build a house, you need some tools. You can't just put boards together and have them stick, right? You need some nails and hammers and staples and files and measuring and saws and all that good stuff. So in your volunteer engagement, what are the tools? It's the program that you use, the CRM or the database or whatever you want to call it. It's the software. I do happen to use Better Impact. I love Better Impact. But there's plenty out there. And so it depends on what you need. And what I tell people is to evaluate what you need to then look for a software. Don't look for a software until you know what you need, because one, it's going to be overwhelming. Two, you may not even get what you really need because it's like, ooh, shiny and cool. But take the time to look at, if you're still, on paper, Excel, whatever it is, or even if you're in a database that you're like not happy with, first, before you start shopping, what do you need it to do? Why do you need it to do that? And what's your future growth? If you're at 20 volunteers now, but you're new and you're expanding, what do you think your max would be? 2,000 volunteers? I don't know. And so put that into your thinking cap and make a list of what you're looking for as you go shopping for, a software system. What do you use to communicate with the volunteers and what do they need and want? Do all of your volunteers love texting? Great. And does your system do texting? Do you need a different thing to do texting in? Because you may not want your personal phone to blow up with all the text from everybody. And that's something, if you're a very small group, you're like, oh, it's fine. I only get 10 people. But if you grow and you go, oh, now you have 100 people texting you, just think about what you might grow into. You may not want 100 people texting you. So just thinking about that. But what's your volunteer usage now and the best way to communicate with them? Surveys. So asking surveys are great. How do you ask the surveys? If you use there's some free ones out there. But just I learned this from experience. Know how many results they will give you for free, because you can send it to a whole lot of people, but then you can only see X amount of results until you pay them more money. So just a heads up on that one. Learn that by experience. So you have a house, and today it is very windy out where I am living, and I'm just talking to our Better Impact Canadian friends, and they have snow, and so we have all sorts of weather that can happen. So thinking about preventing and fixing any destructive forces that might come to your house, your home, to that are within the volunteer realm, what that looks like. Maybe it's a volunteer that's not causing an issue, but maybe they're slowly dripping water, like they're leaking out stuff that you're like, oh, should they really be doing that? I don't know. They're just kind of under the radar, so they're not causing issues. So maybe we'll just let it go. But sometimes those we'll just let it go things can turn into a drip, 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 drip. And if you have water in your house, it turns into mold and things start bubbling up and it's really ugly. And you don't want that. And because then it's even worse to deal with than if you would have like gone, oh, this might be an issue. Let's work on this first and see what's going on. I say never put something under the rug, right? You push it under the rug because anything that's under the rug grows into a volcano. And then at some point it's going to explode in your face. So I also don't recommend that. Maybe it's a volunteer that's okay, but seems to kind of be bursting at the seams a little bit and they explode one day and you're like, whoa, what happened? And maybe they just had a really horrible, rotten day. I don't know. That's where we need to, pull them aside and say, what's going on? Is there something in your personal life? Is it something that happened here? Like, let's talk through life. And maybe it's just that negative volunteer that just needs to be dealt with. It's hard. It's so hard. But that's the thing to think about. What are the undercurrents and what damage are they doing? And if you don't deal with it, what damage is going to be done to your house or to your volunteer engagement if you don't work with that and deal with that? And there's so many different ways and resources. And with all these questions, if you're like, gosh, I don't even know where to start on handling this, just LinkedIn me or message me and I'll do what I can with resources and pointing you in the right directions too. Maybe you have disappearing volunteers. They've kind of like gone out the window because the caulking isn't nice and tight, right? They just sort of ghost you and disappear. So where are the volunteers leaking out of your program? And I hate to say program, I said it, I don't like saying that. Your engagement, your volunteer engagement. And so where are they disappearing? Are they disappearing because life changed? Okay, that makes sense. But who's there isn't there now that used to be there? And maybe you can find out why. And maybe it's something that's just life and there's nothing you can change about that. But maybe there is something that you can change about the engagement that you have with them. Cleaning house. So do you do regular cleaning at your house? I'm not going to ask what regular means, right? My dusting, I hate dusting. Oh, anyway, don't come over and check my dusting. But other things I clean very regularly. So what are some things that you do in your volunteer engagement that are regular cleaning, right? Do you do reminders of tasks for volunteers? Be like, oh, don't forget, can you do this or do that? Do you have reminders set on your calendar to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that will be helpful for you, for the volunteers? Are you cleaning up your records? So speaking of the software systems, are you cleaning that up? Are you finding out the volunteers that are not active and archiving those or deleting them or somehow, taking out pertinent information that's too sensitive or not too sensitive, but shouldn't be there in case there was a data breach? You want to make sure that, that is the least damage that could be caused, that kind of thing. So just online data, your files, online files, digital, footprint. What does that look like? Is your physical space neat and tidy, or does it need like I need to clean this up because we just got done with like 3 humongous events and things are just literally scattered everywhere. I get it, stuff happens. But maybe it's time to spend an afternoon and find a volunteer who likes cleaning to help you sort things out. And help clean the spaces and keep those neat and tidy and labeled and organized so that volunteers can find things, that you can find things. Are there volunteers that just aren't fitting into the role, into the organization? Maybe it's time to talk to them about their real interests, and maybe you find out that they really would rather do something else, and that's great. Help them to not feel guilty for leaving your organization to find something that fits them better. And so having those conversations of cleaning. All right, poll time. So when was the last time you cleaned your database? So Mike will get that up there. So by cleaning, I mean archiving volunteers. Maybe it's pulling out things that you don't need anymore, updating information. I love in January, so while you're answering that, in January, I love doing a mail merge email. So I go into Word, I type up my little like Happy New Year, and now's the time to update information. And now I can mail merge. I pull all of the fields out of Better Impact into Excel, into that database, into, well, not database, but Excel sheet. And then it'll have everybody's name and all the information that I've pulled out of it. Now I can match that and mail merge it into Word. And then in Word, you can email to everybody that's in that list, and it will be personalized. So it'll say, Dear Angela, Happy New Year. Now's the time to look at your information. Here's your username, da-da-da. Here's what we have for your address, your phone number. This is how many hours you did last year. Thank you. This is, all the things that you're signed up for. Here's all the training that you've completed. Here's all the whatever. So it's your photos is or isn't included. Whatever you want them to update, this I find to be a great way to, one, it gives them the hours that they did in the previous year. Two, in that email merge, I also say, if you would like a certificate of the hours that you did last year printed out, please let me know. Last year, I think I had 2 people out of like 300 that wanted a certificate printed. So that way you don't even have to mess with trying to do that for a bunch of people that don't even want it. And that goes back to, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, it kind of goes back to how people like to be appreciated. And so, do they like the certificate? Do they not like the certificate? But this gives that all of your volunteers opportunity to go in and edit all of that stuff. And what I do is I say, here's the link for myimpactpage.com. Go there to update your information. Now, I will still get emails that say, oh, this changed. And so I just go in and I change it instead of being like, go back to Better Impact and change it yourself. But I do know that there's definitely a lot of people that will go back to my impact page and they'll put it in themselves, which is wonderful. And then I just put the other stuff in, whatever changes there are. So that's great. All right, how's our poll going? All right, here we go. When was the last time? This year? Oh, you guys are on top of things. I'm really impressed. So absolutely good job. And just keep that up. I don't know, hopefully my little January tip is good and you can use that for moving forward, maybe this January to help continue to keep clean data, which is awesome. All right, so with the house, you have a framework. And so do you have anything that's bowing in or out? Do you have, things that are cracking? You don't want that. So what policies, these are going to be your boundaries. What are the policies that you have in place? Are they upheld? So you can have them, but are they upheld? Do volunteers know where to find them if they need to find them? So do you have them in paper format? Are they digitally somewhere? Do volunteers even know where to find them? Are they located in, if you have like a volunteer break room, are they on site? If you have multiple sites, are they somewhere there that they and the volunteers and staff can find? Have you had HR help you update your handbook so that, everything's, copacetic with the HR kind of rules and policies and things that are going on? What your handbook is, it looks like many of you have updated that. So congrats, that's great. I think COVID helped us kind of go, oh, we need to update everything. But it's good that you've done it in the last couple of years, it looked like, which is great. Volunteer role descriptions, are those updated? Do they need to be changed? Has anything changed? Locations of supplies or where things happen or how things happen? Over time, things can just gradually change. So it's good to update those and make sure that all of those are up to date. Training aids. I love training aids. Putting together, like it's almost like a standard operating procedure, but a training aid has the instructions of exactly how to do everything. If it's for something you do online, it's having screenshots and then descriptions. We just started a new role for rebooking donors, for their upcoming blood donor appointment. And so it's a new role for volunteers. And so it's an online system, it's software. And so what I did is I did the best I could with the instructions and the screenshots. And then I said, okay, I know what I mean, but somebody new coming won't necessarily know what I mean. And so what I did is I had a couple volunteers interested in helping me do this in that role. I said, okay, here's the instructions I wrote. Here's the program. So I sat with them as they started walking through, and then we could see where they weren't sure and we had to edit the instructions. That's a really great way too, to help make sure that the job aids are going to really help a variety of people. So have, so then they update, and then we updated it from that time. And then I had a different person look at that list. And then they were like, okay, well, that looks good, except this one thing. So, any new instructions or old instructions that maybe need a fresh, review, give it to somebody who doesn't know anything about what you're doing and have them walk through what it is and see if they really do get it. And it really has everything. All right, so you've got volunteers, your guests are now in your house, and they got through the door and they're like, okay, oh wait, are the walls finished? Or was that just like a whole whitewash thing up front? Like, was this a bait and switch? Like, it will look good outside, but inside, like, it's not running very well. So now that they're in there, what are the next steps? Like, are they clear? Like, what's the next step? Do they know where to go, what to do, who to contact? Do they have to do more training? Do they not? Where do they show up? When do they show up? What are all those things that they need to know? So interior decorating, right? So what's it look like inside your house? Do you have volunteers who can mentor or connect as a buddy? So as a guest coming into somebody's house, you won't know where the restroom is. That's a nice thing to know. Where the drinks and food are. That's nice to know. Other niceties about being a guest in a home. Where do I put my coat? All of those things. So thinking about that in the volunteer engagement, those things are good to know. But bigger picture, who's telling them where all these things are? So is it you yourself? Is it the training? Is it a buddy or a mentor or a leader or volunteer that can be that person that will walk them in and introduce them to another new person? Some guests aren't going to want to be in the middle of the big party, right? Maybe they want to kind of hang back. So in your volunteer engagement, do you have a space that's a smaller kind of behind the scenes type kind of roles, or spaces that are maybe more quiet or more office type work, or even in an office that can get loud depending on how it's set up? But do you have space for volunteers to fit that maybe they're more introverted or they needed a quieter space, like those kinds of things? But maybe there's a volunteer who loves the party. They love to be in the middle of it. Maybe you can engage them with bringing on everybody else and connecting them with everybody else. And, oh, here's so-and-so, and they just came, and here's so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And like, you have this in common, like helping them be, connected in your home and feeling comfortable in your home. What does your space look like? Again, is it clean and tidy? Is it easy to find? Are the lights on? Are you, have you been relegated to the basement? What does this look like? So volunteers are in. Is it inviting space to stay? Do you have places for them to be? Kind of talked about that a little bit. We want volunteers to stay for a longer time, right? That's ideal, because then you don't have to go recruit more. And so having places for them to be that are comfortable for them, whether that's life of the party or behind the scenes. Role descriptions, are they clear? What kind of roles do you have them doing? Do we need to change those up based on what we talked about, who volunteers are and all the things that have changed with them? Training. Have you looked at your training, and does it hit all of the senses? People learn, and there's the cone of learning. You can Google that. It's out there a lot of places, the cone of learning. So just from hearing this talk, you're only going to remember a little tiny bit of this whole talk. There's visuals. So there's pictures to look at and there's words to look at. So that helps a little bit. But the best thing is going to be and that's why I'm asking you at the end to write down one thing you're going to share with somebody else, because now you've internalized it and you're sharing it. But with that, having people do it in a webinar like this, we can't have everybody sit down and go, okay, let's do this, in person, and, but you can role play with other people. So use this to evaluate. But what's your training look like? Is it accessible? Is it loud enough? Is it, again, contrast visually? Do you have paper? Do you have things to read? Do you have things that are videos? Do you have things that are hands-on that they can do? Do you have a trainer, mentor, shadowing opportunities. These are all the things that are going to help them stay because they feel connected, because they feel prepared, because they feel just safe and good in this environment. So for those volunteers that have been there for a while, do you have a refresher training once in a while, a meeting once in a while? I'm just going through now and having volunteers with, or meetings with all volunteers. And it's a great opportunity to have, they ask questions that they wouldn't ask on email. And so getting face to face with people is really important too, somehow, whether it's you or a lead volunteer or whatever that looks like to you. But again, having that conversation with volunteers in a way that's accessible to them. And the job aids, again, are they clear? Are they easily accessible? Can you find them? Help people stay longer. Is the whole thing accessible? Your physical site, the online digital part of that, the colorblind, neurodivergent, physical, mental. I mean, what kind of challenges, you know, are you presenting or not? And you've worked through some of those challenges to be open and inclusive. I'm really excited because for the first time, we're going to have a volunteer that's in a wheelchair with a service dog, and she's onboarding right now. And I'm so excited to have her be a greeter at one of our blood banks. And so I'm really excited to have that. Do you have signs and labels that help people know where things are for supplies, rooms, locations, maps, whatever else that you need? Storage. Oh yes, we all need storage, right? We need closets, lots of closets, but not just for all the stuff, but where are the digital things that volunteers need to find? Are there accessible public drives that they need to be able to link to? Are there, logins that they need? Are there all these different things to be able to access the supplies of whatever type they need? Is that easily accessible for everybody? The exit. So at some point, somebody may decide, for a lot of different reasons, I'm done. I got it cut out. I'm done with the party. Thank you so much. It's been a great time, but it's time for me to go. Are you the host that's like, fabulous, I understand. Just let me know, in our world, we can say, thanks, sorry to see you go. But is there anything that we could have done better? And asking them, maybe that's just one-on-one conversations, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a survey. There's lots of different ways to try to gather that information. But when they leave, do they know that they should talk to you and say, it's just time for me to go? And then it's no pressure and they feel like, okay, good, phew, it's all good to go. Do they feel comfortable, and in what way? Do they know how to do that? Are they feeling trapped and they're like, I don't know how to get out of this? So who's the host? You're the host. Yay, you're the host and the hostess with the mostest. So you are the host of the home. And we started with a house, but it becomes a home, right? And now we want people to be in our home. And so these also look for the volunteers that are the natural hosts of your area. They're the ones that are going to be the connectors, like I talked about before, in your home of your volunteer engagement. They want to help you and delegate well. There's lots of things that I've talked about before in LinkedIn about delegating and conversations about delegation too, but delegate well and be aware of people wanting to help you. So host etiquette. As a host, we want to help people feel really good, right? They're coming into our home. We want them to feel good and stay and be like, oh, it's great. 5 Languages of Appreciation by Gary Chapman and Paul White is a great book. If you haven't seen that, talks about different ways to appreciate volunteers or people in general at work. And so I highly recommend that. I've created a plan, a year-long plan of appreciation. So in January, I do that mail merge. I offer the certificate. In November, December, kind of work backwards. We're giving them I'll have a little happy holidays letter that goes out shortly. We're including a small gift card. You might be including something else. One year, I had, during COVID, I taped on a tea bag, a piece of gum, and a Band-Aid. And it was like, thanks for making things warm and cozy. Thanks for keeping us all stuck together, or something like that. And then the Band-Aid, thanks for, saving the day or whatever it was. So you can be really creative with these things without costing a lot of money too. But April, of course, is April Appreciation Month. And You can do things throughout the year. So who doesn't like a good word or act or gift? So as a host, your volunteers, you can give them a good positive word. Again, using this appreciation. Maybe it's a gift, maybe it's not, maybe it's a reference that they need, maybe it's another letter or something else that they need that would speak volumes to them. But helping people feel, again, warm, comfortable, thank you, using their name. So are you checking in as people are coming in, the party's going on, right? Are you like checking in? Oh, do you need a drink? How are you doing that? By checking in, that could be a survey. It could be one-on-one. It could be in a group. It could be in person. Again, all different ways of gathering information, but check in on your volunteers. How are they doing? Do you still like what you're doing? Do you want a different job, different role? All right, so ta-da, we've gotten the perfect house. It's sold. We're great. We found it. So even when you build this perfect house and home, some people are just going to drive by, right? Because your house that's not their house. That's not where they fit. And so some people are going to want to sit on the porch just a little bit, check it out. All right, comfy or not, and they'll decide that, no, it's not for me. Okay. Some people are going to come all the way into the house and they're going to hang out and do a little bit and do their thing. But then it's going to be time for them to go for a little bit based on their interest, their life, whatever. And then some are going to become like the residents of your home and they're just going to move on in, right? Now, I think it's less likely that residents take over your job and everybody else's job. I think we've all seen one or two instances of that, but I think there's less, I hope. And you can put in the chat if I'm wrong. I don't know, maybe you have more than one, or haven't had any at all. But the volunteer that sort of starts doing things like without your knowledge and starts taking over things, like that's not good either. So you don't want to go to that extreme of them moved in and taken over. But you want them to feel at home and want to take some responsibility. So a case in point, I was doing a training just yesterday, and we were in the room, and all of a sudden we heard water, and we were the only ones in the building because it was closed down to the public, but we were there for their training, and water started pouring down from the ceiling. And so I'm calling the people I need to call. Meanwhile, the volunteers were running around finding trash cans and blankets and towels and whatever else they could find to start catching the water. They just jumped in. It was like they owned it, like it was their house. Like they didn't step back and go, "Oh, Angela, what are you gonna do?" It was like, I was like, I'm calling, and they just all like jumped in, and that to me means they're owning that space. Like that has become part of that. So they're gonna love it, and then they're gonna start telling others. So now that once we've retained, this is all going kind of part of that retaining volunteers through all of these questions that I've been asking, retaining, these are your residents, quote, quote, right? And they're coming in and they love it. And they're going to start sharing this with people. They start inviting their neighbors and their friends, and they're going to tell their whatever club and group they're in. So these are the ones that are going to start recruiting for you. Because of that, you need to give them tools that they need to be able to share easily. Do you have social posts put together that they can just share? Do you have flyers they can put out? Do you have whatever else that they want? Ask them what way they want to be able to share things and give that to them. So now we've turned it into a home, right? And so we went from a house, now we're a home, and now we got people. Yay, people, it's all what we want. We're looking for great volunteers. So here we are, and so we're excited about that. So again, remember that 1% change doesn't mean a lot, right, today, but what it's going to mean is at the end of the year, it's 37 times more, moved forward, which is huge. So just little bit by little bit. So again, here we're getting to the end of the official thing, and then we'll get to questions. But I'm going to sit here for just a second. So on a piece of paper, napkin, whatever you have, what's the one thing that you're going to share with somebody else? Is there anything that you gained out of this? I hope something. Is there a question that you want to answer? Is there something that you thought like, oh, I want to share that with so-and-so because I think that would be helpful. And then also write down what's the one thing that you want to implement this week. I know we're heading into holidays, so don't make it anything that's like gonna run into the holidays, right? But what's something, just one little thing, and it might even just be like, I'm gonna put this on the calendar and I'm gonna do, this one thing. What's that one thing that you're gonna implement? And again, if you want me to check in with you, I'm happy to do that and kind of give you a little like check in, like, hey, rah, rah, you did it. Or maybe you didn't do it, but but you did the conference and or you did the webinar and, you at least, we're thinking about it. So this is encouraging and keep up the good work. So I'm happy to do that. Just do a message on there with LinkedIn. So I just want to thank you so much. And this is my contact information. The QR code is for my LinkedIn. And there is a survey, and I think that they'll be dropping those links in there for you to be able to contact me after this. And then a survey. I would love to hear your comments and feedback as well on that survey. And then also, I am on my LinkedIn page, or my LinkedIn, I guess, page. After this, a post is going to be coming up that will continue this conversation. So if there's more conversation that you would like to have about this topic, I have that in about 2:15 today. I think it's going to drop East Coast time. So look for that. And if you want to add more questions, comments, and learn from other people, so kind of turn it almost into a chat line with the comments. I'm happy with that. That'd be great to continue this conversation. So again, I'm sorry I don't have like the top 3 perfect ways to solve the problem. But these questions and things that I've evaluated and put into place have helped me have a good, solid volunteer base. And even if volunteers haven't stayed, they've been happy when they're here with me and the blood bank, and they've been happy doing what they're doing for the length of time that they want to stay. And so I'm really happy about that. All right, so Mike, I think I'll stop sharing. I think everybody got a screenshot or whatever that, I guess.
Yep. So we got a lot of questions. The chat was very active. And the cool thing is people are answering each other's questions, saying how their program works, which is really neat.
Perfect. Yes.
A summary of a lot of questions asked. People were asking, how do you motivate, or what are strategies to motivate volunteers? People seem to be having some issues with that.
Ooh, great question. Let me get a drink. Okay, so motivation. Motivation is intrinsic. And so you have to go into why they want to volunteer. So I guess the question too is, why do you need to motivate them? Is it motivating them to come into your house, like come and join you? Is it filling out the application? What part of motivation do you need? Because I think part of it is that if it's getting people in your door, then that's that curb appeal that I talked about. What does your website look like? What's your application look like? All of those things. What's your description? Is it exciting? And I always say that it should be very realistic. You don't want to do a bait and switch, because then volunteers are going to be like, I don't want to do that. So if it's like cleaning up, like you're at the SPCA or something, I don't know, I'm just picking the dog thing, and they're like, your volunteers are going to be like poop scooping. Well, it needs to be done. Cleaning out the cat litter, like it's not fabulous, but if you're like, you get to pet the puppies and da 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 da, and then at the very bottom you're like, oh, and you might have to clean, but really the whole job is like cleaning out after the dogs, like then with that, like, yeah, that's not realistic. So you got to be realistic about what those expectations are. But motivation too, it's looking at why they're doing it. Is it for hours for school? Is it because they want connection? So if it's somebody who's looking for connection, make sure, like I talked about, like that host of the party or the house, make sure that you have a good people person that's going to like get that community. Create ways that volunteers can communicate and connect together. I just, in this last meeting, as an icebreaker, I asked volunteers what hobbies they liked. And then there were similar people, people with similar hobbies, like crochet, I like gardening, I like walking, I like reading. And I was like, oh. And so in the back of my head, I'm kind of thinking like maybe next year I need to create almost like little, like a reading group or a, gardening group or a whatever group. Like, so I'm taking that to heart this year to think about that for next year. How could I implement that so that they're going to be connected, not just to the blood bank and to our mission of saving lives, but also to each other. But you also don't want that to go crazy and go like, go rogue either. So there's balances. The other thing too, thinking about that is impact. The volunteers I think of today want to know what the impact is, right? They don't want to just busy work. Now I have volunteers who love folding letters and mailing, and that's great. And I love it. But I always tell them what it's for. This letter is going out to thank our fundraising, people that have given us funds. So we need to get this out timely so that they can see it and go. And so I tell them why, and I try in every single email, two things. One, I try to say, thank you for helping the blood bank save lives, because that's what we're doing. And even if they're sending letters out, they're not out like, taking blood. That's for staff people, but everything that volunteers are doing are helping our impact, are helping our mission. So tying impact into that is huge. I really think that's huge. Why are you doing what you're doing and what's the impact? So always bringing back that impact. I think, I don't know, Mike, does that kind of help? I don't know if that helps, but those are some of my ideas on that.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Next question we got here, it says, how do you deal with volunteers who are resistant to using an online system?
Yeah, I know. So we still have some of those at the blood bank. And what I have done is we have lead volunteers at each of our centers. We have 6 different buildings that are spread all over like 2.5 hours from each other. And so I really highly recommend finding somebody who is willing to take on more leadership, and maybe they can be that person's tech help. And maybe, they make the phone call every month for the schedule, say, hey, so-and-so, I'll put your schedule in for you. What do you need help with? So that's something, because otherwise, if they're resistant, they're just going to be resistant. If it's not because it's hard to get into your thing, if they're just resistant, that's just some people. And it's not always age. I have to say, I have a 92-year-old volunteer who's a lead, and she uses Better Impact. It's limited use, but she can do what she needs to do. It's incredible.
Okay, and we may have to do this as the last one. I know we had so many questions, so please connect with Angela directly. I know she'd obviously love to talk to you. But the last one we got here, it says, we're seeing a bit of a trend where volunteers complete the online application. We follow up to get the individual involved, but they change their mind. So suggestions for getting them involved and our strategies to enhance their process.
I think that's the $1 million question today. I think everybody I've talked to has that same issue. I do too. People are filling out, one of my volunteers was like, I think people are home and they're drinking their mimosas or whatever. And, and by midnight, they're like, oh, I want to help save the world. And they fill out an application. And then, then you never hear from them again, because they wake up the next morning and they have life that happens. I really don't know what the solution is, but I do know that it has to be quick. Like, the responses have to be quick. In today's world, we're all used to instant. So I think that, that's something that I'm certainly trying to work on, is making sure that we have automatic emails that go out when the application goes in. Like with Better Impact, you can set that up where an email goes out, and so that goes out right away. And then I have another volunteer, because it's just me that with the 300 volunteers spread all over Delmarva. And so I delegate, and a volunteer has been willing to send out reminders to these applicants. And so every week they get a reminder, hey, set up the meeting with Angela online, da, 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 da. So we just follow up. And sorry, I don't have a brilliant answer for that one. But that's what I've done. So if somebody else has figured it out, oh my gosh, post it, and we'll all learn from you. But I think it's just the trend. People are, I don't know, just busy. And I think they're not realistic with their time. They think they can do it, and then they go, oh, no, I can't. I look forward to seeing everybody online.